Caseus. Jedi Redeemed. Chapter 5. Gaidom sat and meditated in the rainforest clearing, not far from the temple. Thoughts of his friend and the plight of the Alliance filling his mind. For months, an unshakable fear filled his head. Some elusive, unknown evil with terrifying potential. What it was, and where it was coming from, were all but a mystery to him. Gaidom? Sanja approached and knelt beside her husband, placing her arm around him. I don't know what to do, Sanja. I knew that Kessel had changed him, but with all that's happened to him, I guess I never expected to see him like this. Maybe it's for the best if he leaves. He's not much use to the cause in his current state. That's just it, though. In the state he's in, he shouldn't be isolating himself. He needs help. But he refuses to accept it. And do you think it's in your power to make him? What am I supposed to do? If I just let him go, best case scenario, he dies of old age on a barren rock somewhere in wild space. I know he doesn't want to put anyone else at risk because of him, but what about those of us who have already accepted that risk? You need to relax. Clear your head. Gaidom exhaled and closed his eyes. Taking Sanja's hand, he gently caressed the tips of her fingers and felt just a little more at ease. That is until he saw the Arabella flying overhead out of the hangar and into the skies. Was that a scheduled takeoff? No. Damn it. Running inside, Gaidom found an engineer fixing up a damaged R5 unit. The Arabella just took off. Did they say where it was headed?
They said it was a supply run. I'm sorry, I don't have that clearance, Colonel.
Gaidom looked around the temple for Caseus, but found no sign of him. No. Running to the communications relay, Gaidom entered the comm codes for the Arabella. On board the ship, Bendel punched in coordinates, and after jumping to lightspeed, they were on their way to Dandran. Okay, nav system is up and running. We'll be there in a few hours. Caseus sat still in his seat as the comm light began to blink. Bendel noticed and reached for it.
Don't. It's just Gaidom.
You don't think we should let him know?
Why? So he can try to talk me out of this? I don't think so. This is happening. After this is done, we go our separate ways. You tell Gaidom I forced you to take me.
Sounds like you're asking me to lie to a friend. Caseus looked at Bendel.
If you want, I can make this scenario a bit more realistic.
Bendel kept his hand close to his blaster, but turned and left Caseus alone, heading back to the cockpit with Kresh. Caseus was in no mood to argue or negotiate. From here until their mission was successful, they were going to do things his way. He could see the faces of Dotami and the others in his mind, laughing, living out their lives in satisfaction and pleasure, safe in the knowledge that they had secured their vengeance. It made his blood boil. And it made him smile. When he found them, he would show them just how wrong they were. He would make them feel the pain he felt. He knew it wouldn't help him. He knew it wouldn't bring Liara back to him. He didn't care. He wanted them dead. He knew he shouldn't. But it was all he could think about. Caseus? Daros entered the room and sat across from Caseus.
Daros.
I never got the chance to thank you for you and your friends saving me during the Clone Wars, so thank you. Caseus nodded.
When we were attacked by these people, there were 2 Valkorians with them. I hope you're prepared to face off against them again.
Trust me, I'm not the helpless boy I was when you met me. They're in for a world of hurt.
Good. What happened after that business on Valcor Prime, anyway? The Republic put me into foster care for a while. I was adopted about a year after the war ended. When I turned 14, they enlisted me in the Imperial Academy. I didn't stay long, though. Unlike others in the galaxy, I saw the Empire for what they were. I didn't believe the propaganda against the Jedi for a second. I deserted, and soon I found others like me who wanted to fight back. I was afraid you died with the other Jedi. Not all of us died with the rise of the Empire. Those of us who didn't were hunted by the Inquisitors and Vader. The fact I've survived as long as I have is... I don't know. Well, you're here. That's something.
Caseus looked at Daros and out at the stars.
Sometimes I wish I wasn't.
What?
Sometimes I wish I hadn't survived. And I have to remind myself that I'm still here for a reason. But I don't know what that reason is anymore.
You don't think maybe it's to keep the Jedi alive?
The Order already fell, Daros. My training an apprentice was my way of trying to keep them alive. And it only brought pain. Maybe it's... Daros. It's good to see you again. But I'm done talking. Please, just let me be.
Daros looked as though he was going to say something else, but shut his mouth and nodded. Standing up, he left Caseus alone and returned to the cockpit. Back on Yavin, Guidome was looking through all the charted flight paths while desperately trying to contact the Arabella. In both ventures, he was unsuccessful.
Colonel, what is it you think they're doing anyway?
Caseus is on that ship, Lieutenant. They're either taking him somewhere to hide or something worse.
Worse, sir?
Let's just say that Caseus isn't in the best state of mind right now. And I fear what he's going to do if my theory is correct.
And what theory is that?
Never you mind. Just know that it doesn't bode well for him or any of us.
Guidome contacted the Arabella again, and again without luck. He was worried. Caseus was his friend. But he was dangerous in his current state. Not just to others, but himself. As Caseus walked through the Arabella, he stepped into the large empty room used for training. Staring at the walls, he sighed and removed his lightsaber from his belt, examining the scuffed and battered metal hilt. He was out of practice. He hadn't had any real exercise in nearly 4 years. Switching on his weapon, he held it in front of his face and slowly ran through some basic drills, movements, and techniques that had been engraved into his mind since he could remember. The gentle, deep humming of the blade as it swished through the air brought a semblance of comfort to his heart. His footwork was rusty, but with a bit of time he'd catch on again. Taking it a step at a time, his movements became more complex as his muscle memory began to kick in, as though every swing and pivot was guided by the Force itself. Finally, he ended his exercise and put his saber away. He still felt rusty, but he would be more than capable of dealing with Dotami. As he closed his eyes, he could hear something. Small metal footsteps approaching from behind. Caseus turned slowly and caught Pip in midair as he tried to swing his wrench.
Sorry. Figured a sneak attack would help keep you on your toes.
It's not much of a sneak attack if you yell before you do it.
Caseus dropped Pip, who landed on the floor with a metal clatter, and stood dusting himself off.
So, we're going after Liara's killers. You sure about this?
This has to be done, Pip.
Right, I agree, but do you think you're ready to take these guys on? They're more dangerous than we gave them credit for last time.
That's why I brought backup this time. In case things go sour. Speaking of which, how did you get on board? And why are you tagging along anyway?
Oh, that was easy. I snuck on while Kresh was yelling at Tosa. As for why, Liara was my friend. And I want to be there when we wipe the floor with their ugly mugs.
Caseus smiled a bit and nodded.
For Liara.
For Liara.
After about an hour or so, Caseus walked to the cockpit just as the Arabella exited hyperspace.
There it is. Dandran. A low-life paradise and the current nesting ground for a couple of unlucky bastards.
Tosa hissed and looked at Caseus.
Do me a favor. Leave Zarosh to me.
Why?
He and I never really saw eye to eye. I think it's time we settled this.
Take him. Same goes for the rest of you. Feel free to deal with these guys however you see fit. But Dotami is mine. We clear?
The crew nodded as Caseus looked out the viewport.
Set us down by the equator.
As Bendel brought the Arabella into Dandran's atmosphere, Pip slipped off into another corridor and pulled out a tracking beacon, hiding it in a crate of tools. Back on Yavin, Guidome was going over all the possible routes for a third time, when a blue light flickered on the map.
What is it, Colonel?
That's Pip's tracking signal. It's coming from Dandran. What is he doing out there? Wait a minute. That's where they are. Why Dandran unless... Lieutenant, ready my ship. Hurry.
Stepping off the Arabella, Caseus looked around. The scenery was nothing to write home about. But there were no lakes of acid, no imperial palace, no raging storms, so he figured he would count his blessings.
How far to the nearest settlement?
Should be just over those hills.
Caseus looked over at the distant rocky hills and started walking. The crew of the Arabella followed suit. By the time they had crested the hills, Caseus was getting anxious. He wanted to find Dotame and the others and deal with them. At the base of the valley was a large town. Not primitive by any means, but certainly less advanced than other civilizations he had seen.
Doubtful. But someone here probably knows where to find them. Dotame isn't exactly known for his subtlety.
Come on. We're wasting time.
Upon reaching the town, Caseus spotted several stormtrooper helmets lining the doorways of many of the establishments. Whether that was a warning to him or a warning to the Empire, he couldn't say. And he thought it best not to find out. Turning to his crew, he spoke.
Split up. Groups of 2. Daros, you and Tosa check out the shops and stands. Kresh, Bendel, restaurants and pubs. Pip, come with me. We're gonna scout the docking bays. Anything happens, you call me immediately. Got it?
The crew nodded and split up, as Pip followed Caseus towards the shipyards.
This place is oddly quiet.
Just stay close to me. We don't need any junkers coming for you.
Junkers?
Pip stepped closer and walked alongside his friend as they reached the first landing bay. A few passenger transports had recently landed, as creatures and species from all over the galaxy made their way to and from the shuttles.
Excuse me, sir.
Caseus turned around to a man tapping his shoulder and nearly had a heart attack.
That droid of yours looks a bit scuffed up. Could I interest you in a tune-up?
Caseus was staring face to face with an aged clone trooper, sporting a patchy beard and balding head.
I'm sorry.
Your droid. Would you care for a tune-up for him?
Caseus looked from Pip back to the clone and nodded.
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Right this way.
The clone led Caseus to a run-down old shop with a large metal door that opened with a loud creak.
Sorry about the mess. Been, reorganizing.
As Caseus and Pip stepped inside, the clone lifted Pip onto a workbench.
Whoa, easy there. Look, easy on the servo motor. I tweaked the gears a while back. And if you could fix up the joints a bit, I'm hearing this weird squeak when I walk.
You got it.
Caseus looked around the shop walls. Sitting in the far back, partially covered by an old tarp. A clone helmet, with the distinctive colors of the 303rd. Not just any helmet either. A captain's helmet. One he recognized.
So, you a traveler?
Yeah, just here, passing through. You?
Oh, I've lived here for years.
How many years?
Well, more than I'd care to remember.
Maybe since the war?
The Clone Wars? No, not that far. Terrible conflict that was.
Yeah. Shame what happened to the Jedi.
Yeah, terrible shame.
Caseus could see this clone starting to nervously fidget with his tools while working on Pip.
Is that a set of clone armor I see over there?
Yeah, maybe.
303rd Division. That must have been difficult to acquire. Unless you served.
The clone quickly drew a blaster and pointed it at Caseus.
Who are you?
Caseus slowly turned and activated his lightsaber.
A Jedi.
Captain Kriega. Just as I thought.
Commander Urshon.
Kriega's hands shook as he kept his blaster aimed at his old comrade.
What are you doing here?
I was about to ask you the same thing. I thought the clones were grandfathered in with the ranks of the Empire.
Are you here to kill me?
Not you, no. But that could change depending on your next move.
Kriega looked at Caseus, who stared back with a stone-faced expression. Slowly, he lowered his weapon as Caseus did the same.
You shouldn't be here.
Caseus stared at Kriega.
Not that... I didn't mean that you were supposed to be dead,
I know what you mean. Now why are you here?
Kriega sat on a box inside.
It happens to nearly every clone. With our accelerated aging, I was deemed unfit for service. And they sent me away. Now I'm here, struggling to make a living.
Caseus stepped closer and sat across from him.
I need to know. Order 66. When it was issued, did you obey?
Kriega couldn't bring himself to look at Caseus. He simply shut his eyes tightly and shook.
I couldn't resist. The order was given and I had no control. We were aiding Master Dalva in the lower districts, helping clean up any remnants of the Separatist attack. The order was given and...
Your inhibitor chip.
My what?
You remember Juro, right? Years ago, before he died, he discovered something. Something that was kept from the Republic and its soldiers. You clones were implanted with chips in your brains from an early age. They made you follow orders from the Chancellor without question. Juro's was damaged on a mission to Kelja. He didn't turn because of that.
Kriega stared in disbelief.
We had no choice.
I'm not here to harm you, Kriega. What happened can't be changed. The Clone Wars are long over. The Republic fell, and so did the Jedi. I know you had no choice in the matter. Had I known earlier about what was going to happen, but I didn't. None of us did. We were all just pawns.
I'm sorry, Caseus. I'm sorry for what happened.
I am too. But I have a job to do here. I need information. Anything. It's the least I can do. I'm looking for a Gran. Goes by the name Dotami. We tracked him to this planet, now we need to find him. Dotami? The name is familiar. What's he like?
Pompous, arrogant, wears expensive clothing to portray himself as more important than he is. He may have been traveling with a Trandoshan, and a young man with green hair.
They came through here, it was a while ago. Your best bet would be to check the foundries up in the western mountains. Head northwest. You'll know when you see it. Those foundries have been out of function for nearly 2 decades. Perfect place to hide if you're on the run.
Caseus stood. And that's where we'll go.
Thank you, Captain. Caseus.
Caseus looked back to Kriega.
I never understood all the Jedi stuff. But I've seen the things you can do. And you haven't survived this long by just your skill. Maybe there's more to this Force thing.
When the days grow as dark as they have, Captain, the Force is all you can trust. May the Force be with you. Kriega nodded as Caseus and Pip left the shop.
Captain, what if he turns you in?
He won't. It took him suffering through the Empire to see the truth. Even if he did, they'd kill him too. Caseus grabbed his comlink and contacted the crew. Meet back at the Arabella pronto. I have a lead.